Hi, and welcome to another episode of Composed Living with Elsa Albert. I am your host, Elsa. Today we have such a cool guest. Her name is Erin Riley. She's the founder and CEO of Cabbage Hill Animal Free Fertilizer Company. I actually met her because she came into the Composed Living shop here in Woodland Hills, and we ended up chatting for like 2 hours. And we probably should have just recorded that conversation because it was so eye-opening. And I'm intrigued by her passion for this company and for everything she's doing. Erin has been a master gardener since 1992. In 2009, at the height of the local food movement, Erin founded her edible landscaping company, Hope Gardens. She earned her landscape contractor's license in 2017. She's been planting organic gardens for homes, schools, nonprofits, and she dedicates herself to issues like soil health, composting, community gardening, and food justice. Now, Erin is stewarding a fertilizer renaissance, elevating organic fertilizers past their dependence on animal byproducts by founding the first vegan fertilizer company. How awesome is that? Hi, Erin. Thank you so much for being my guest today.
Hi, so nice to be here.
I shared a little bit in the bio how we met. And it was like we should have just recorded the whole conversation we had in the shop because we covered all the bases.
Yeah.
But I had no idea how intrigued I would be by fertilizer and also how little I knew about what goes into all of these products and like what it is that we're sort of not even whatever, unconsciously purchasing. And that's so difficult when you have these like not that highly regulated industries. We just assume we're doing the right thing. And then you have a conversation with someone who's as knowledgeable as you are, and you learn we've been doing it wrong.
Yeah. Especially, your platform all talks about so much about conscious consumerism.
Yeah.
And, we how are you if someone is not being transparent, if a company or an industry is not being transparent, then how are you supposed to know? And especially
Yeah.
as something as trustworthy as an organic label. I think I can't think of something much more instantaneously trustworthy than that word.
Oh, for sure. And also, I think that it's a very overarching word. Like people think it means a lot of things that it doesn't. For example, organic eggs. I think when you read that label, you also assume that it means that they're free range, that they've been treated humanely, that there's a lot of assumptions that people add because they're like organic is good for you, so it must just be like generally good for the animals, the planet, everything.
Yeah, it's like a
Uh,
gold standard.
yeah, totally. So I get that. But let's start back at the beginning. Tell us how you got started on this journey.
Yeah, I have had an edible vegetable gardening business for about 14 years here in LA. So I've done hundreds of vegetable gardens, and over the course of having that job, I decided to order my own fertilizer inputs and just create my own fertilizer blends, organic fertilizer. I did organic gardening. And I think it was over time because I was dealing with the single inputs, right, that they make to make a blended fertilizer you buy in the bag. Um, I was researching the inputs individually. And over time was like poultry meal, blood meal, bone meal, which actually we roll off the tongue. It's very common for gardeners to use these products. You don't
Yeah.
really think about it too much. And I don't know, I just got really invested in what these inputs were. And of course I could figure seaweed, kelp, alfalfa, straightforward. There's a lot of mined ingredients that are used, langbonite, potash, rock phosphate. But again, they're mined, so you sort of understand what that input was. But blood meal, bone meal, poultry meal, and then even like bat guano, seabird guano. Where in the world are these inputs coming from?
Yeah.
The more I dug around, it was just got worse and worse. That these inputs aren't regulated, and that would probably be the first thing we assume about organic is that it's a regulation to keep it safe.
Hmm.
But I found these inputs because they come from factory farms and slaughterhouses, and then I found out about the rendering industry, which is that middleman between slaughterhouses and fertilizer and other animal byproducts. so many animals in so many situations go into that system that wouldn't be humanly possible to regulate it. It's
Yeah.
millions, if not billions, of animals in all kinds of different. They could be diseased, they could be dead, they could be half dead. It's just you don't know where they come from. There was even an organic input I found, and these are OMRI approved, by the way. OMRI approved, highest level of organic.
What does that stand for?
Organic Review Materials Institute, and so
Okay.
they keep the international standard for organic
Got it.
allegedly very high. And they're definitely like they had a definition of a product called tankage, which is literally just whatever's left in the tank, like after they
Oh,
deliver. I How could that be organic? I mean, that just doesn't. It could be organic in that it means from life, which is the definition of organic,
yes.
from life. That's it. So I found that very disheartening. And I had a lot of vegan and vegetarian clients. I wanted to be able to provide a completely meat-free garden for them.
Yeah.
So I took all those individual inputs that I had and I was able to make a plant-based, mineral-based, animal-free blend. I used it in their gardens. I also loved it because I could tweak fertilizers for like acid plants or house plants or different times of year. Gardens need different kind of nutrients. So I found all that very interesting. Um, but so I made these plant and mineral based inputs, used them in the gardens, and they work just as well. And then we did like side by sides trials of
Yeah.
different, in like controlled circumstances, did just as well.
That's cool.
Yeah. And so then I moved on to thinking maybe this should be for everybody. Why should it just be for my clients? And I ended up turning my entire company plant-based, gave everybody that good treatment, and again decided just to bring it to the public. So then it was lab testing because fertilizer is licensed, despite the fact that there are regulations. It's just interesting where they land.
Yeah.
So I have to get licensed. Everything has to be highly regulated. But when you look way back into the source, the regulation isn't there. So they can give the fertilizer companies a runaround, but the people that provide the inputs for these, it's anyone's, game. In fact, I was reading Render magazine, as you do when you're researching things. So
Who
industry,
knew that there was such a magazine out
right
there?
next to Sunset magazine, Render magazine. And they were talking about, again, this is an insider periodical, and they were talking about, there's a quote where they said, if consumers start wanting their inputs to be organic, the industry is going to have a problem. And I thought, well, there you go. They said it right there. The input, that's not organic till it hits the bag,
Mm-hmm.
which is odd. So, the rendering was a big concern, and it was good to be able to move my gardens past that. I was also concerned, ethically, I think it's pretty obvious where there's a concern. Organic vegetable gardens, slaughterhouses, I don't know. Do they have to go together?
Well, and
But it was
also, I
also,
mean, for
yeah,
people who make the conscious choice to be vegetarian or vegan, even if it's not, I mean, I assume it's because of the animals and the planet and their own well-being. But maybe there's another reason out there that I'm not aware of. Why would you want to grow your vegetables using animals if you're going out of your way to avoid them? That's the part that really just sticks with me that makes absolutely no sense. Like animals are not needed to grow plants.
let's hope not. Yeah. Because, like you said, what would be sustainable about that? Even if your ethical thing is you don't, that's not your biggest concern. Sustainably, we all
Yeah.
know how bad it is for the planet to have massive animal agriculture.
Yeah. We just had Sheila Moravati on a previous episode. She's the founder of Habits of Waste. And we were talking about veganism and simple things that people can do to impact climate change. And she said, if Americans just chose to eat 8 plant-based meals a week, that's enough to make a huge impact. And that's not that much. Like breakfast 7 days a week, you don't need animal products in your breakfast. Have
Yeah.
cereal with oat milk or something, granola, make a smoothie, whatever,
Oh yeah.
or just some fresh fruit,
Mm-hmm.
or skip it. Have a salad for lunch, great.
Oh
And
yeah.
then that's it. You're already making an impact. And if there's 6 people in my house. So if I'm cooking for 6 people, then it's like, wow, now we've taken the equivalent of like 2 cars off the road for a year.
Exactly.
Uh, So it's very sustainable to at least limit your intake of those animal products. And I'll rephrase my previous sentence. I'm totally fine with like a working farm that is set up to maintain its own ecosystem. And in that instance, I'm okay with the animals participating in the growth of the plants, meaning like chickens running around in your field and, they're helping to like pick out little bugs and they're also providing you with natural fertilizer. That's a beautiful self-sustaining ecosystem that I'm very on board with. But yeah, when we're purchasing products from someone and we don't have a full understanding of what's happening, or there isn't another option, that seems pretty wild to me.
Yeah. And like you brought up, it's about scale. This isn't to replace something that a farmer is doing on their own land, which unfortunately now is few and far between. And
Yeah.
again, we have the slaughterhouses and the confined animal feeding operations to blame for that. There used to be a very pastoral, farmers took responsibility for their animals, their land. They grew the food the animals ate.
Yeah.
Like you said, and then the animals walk across the fields and poop and do their thing. But they're being fed alfalfa, hay, animals today, where these
What they're
fertilizer
supposed to
inputs,
be eating.
yeah, what they're supposed to be eating, and grown by the farmer. So like
Mm-hmm.
there's a real, that link is there of responsibility. At the CFA, the CAFOs, the confined animal feeding operations, well, that's one reason too we have all the antibiotics, because now they have all these, the animals of yore would go outside and inside, the farms we're talking about. These
Yeah.
animals are confined all year round inside. And so you have to have antibiotics because they're in such close contact with each other with no fresh air, nowhere to roam. And then they're fed the exact meals we're talking about that go in the fertilizer. So the
Yeah.
animals are fed ground animals. So they're not fed alfalfa or hay. So when they poop, it's not poop like they could go in a field. It's actually quite toxic.
Yeah.
And that's when you see those big lagoons. I grew up in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, so it's farm country. I never saw a giant lagoon of poop in my life. But now you see these aerial photos, let's say of a pig farm or something, and they have these
It's
giant
just
problematic
nasty.
lagoons. Yeah. And
It's like
that's
how we think about a pigsty, right? You assume that pigs are like just really filthy, kind of smelly animals, but they're
yeah.
not. A healthy animal
Hmm.
actually doesn't have any of those problems.
Yeah, exactly. So now they have these giant pits they have to do something with, and they end up being able to recycle them into materials that then they market back to gardeners. So these meals are running through ecology in a way never been done before.
Yeah.
I mean, the last 40 years, never been done before. So we have no idea what the consequences are. And then I'm putting this on organic vegetables. And I think too, I don't think always regulators, if I'm, let's say I just think the best of them, they're not in touch with how necessarily people use products or their gardens. So
Mm,
for me as an organic gardener, I taught in a lot of school gardens. I wanted kids to eat right off the vine. That's the fun part. You might buff it off or wipe it on your shirt, but
yeah.
you're not doing a full on wash session. And they are playing in the soil. They're using their hands.
Yeah.
So I just don't think people think about it, that if that is a raw material that came out of this CAFO system and then is put in a bag for organic fertilizer and you're having kids consume it, in essence, they could be consuming it. And
Yeah.
that just does not seem safe to me.
Well, and anyone who's digging into the dirt, I mean, you don't know what seeps in through your skin. And yeah, it's problematic all the way around. And I agree with you. I love just pulling food off of its, source and eating it. And I think it like appalled my husband when we first met because he was just like, what are you doing? Like, you have to wash things. And I was like, huh, why?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I grew up like my dad's home. The whole property was edible. So even their ground cover was like rosemary. They had probably 30 or 40 different kinds of citrus trees. They had all the stone fruits and everything was organic. Everything was, like they would distill their own orange oil to spray the crops to prevent bugs. And that was oranges coming from their own trees. And then growing all the like tomatoes and garlic, and they have chickens and all that. So it was just such a cool experience in my 20s to stay with them. You wake up and you can just go pick your own orange juice
Yeah.
and basically go harvest your own omelet. So it was like, here's some fresh eggs, garlic, tomatoes, all the things. It was so wonderful. And they made it look so easy, like all you need is a little bit of land and you can have this whole harvest of really nutritious foods that, other than the chickens, don't involve any animals.
Yeah. And that's that sun power, right? That's a sun powered garden.
Yeah.
Just out in the sun using natural resources. I mean, I think that's the dream. People really want that. And even if they can't have 30 different kinds of citrus, their own little garden represents a
Yeah.
lifestyle that I think we're all craving. We've been craving it for a long time, that connection with the earth, especially as a parent and a mom. I mean, I don't think there's any time where you alchemize more wanting to provide that kind of environment for your kids, from the health to the knowledge. The whole spectrum of food growing is so educational and eye-opening for
Yeah.
people.
I
Yeah.
worry a lot that our younger two kids have no concept of their connection to this planet. It's not how I was raised. We did a lot of camping. We obviously did a lot of gardening. My parents have not been married for a long time, but even like separately, they both are so into, like my mom loves gardening and loves cooking. My dad loved sort of taking care for the chickens and the trees and doing landscaping on kind of a bigger level. And we just were always outside as kids. And we were always cooking, even from a very, very young age. The expectation was that if you wanted to eat, you contributed to your meal in some way, in all age appropriate chores. But, we'd make salads and chop vegetables, and do dishes.
Yeah.
And even just sitting outside as a kid. I mean, I'm so thankful that we didn't grow up with the internet and cell phones and all of that, because I would get bored and I would just like find bean pods that fell off of trees and crack them open and see what the seeds look like and plant them and see if anything would grow. Or like we'd have
Yeah.
acorns fall off of oak trees and we'd just like mash them up with rocks. And it was so nice. Like it's nice to connect with the outdoors in that way and have an understanding of this planet that sustains you and gives you life. And it truly is the most depressing thing to me to see a whole generation of kids growing up who are only electronic.
Yeah.
And I try so hard not to be judgmental because I know that it's meaningful for them and they don't know something that's different. But as a parent, it's like, what do you do? Are you going to force your teenagers like kicking and screaming to go do something that they have no interest in, knowing that like hopefully something will sink in and it'll be for their greater good? Or is it like the world has moved on from this and they just have no interest and they're going to live in like some weird virtual reality bubble where they don't interact with humans? And like that's how they're wired now. I don't know, but it
Yeah.
sucks.
It does. I think the pendulum will shift. I think it always does. But I agree. I had the same kind of childhood. Um, we would rake leaves into rooms
Oh,
and play
so
house.
fun.
You would always know when the insects were coming and going. You saw cicadas. You knew they came at certain times of year.
Yeah.
It wasn't like anyone was formally instructing us. It was through observation, which I think is the best kind of education, because and that's like what homeschooling is, right? You're
Yeah.
drawn to naturally whatever you want to have. Um, so I think the pendulum will switch and they'll become parents someday. And they're honestly not, they're gonna, at some point, we're all gonna want some authenticity and some stake in the kind of world we have. And my God, I mean, there couldn't be banging the drum any louder. Scientists saying,
Yeah.
get your shit together for this planet, So the
But the
pressure on
decision
you
makers
is
are
gonna be even
too
higher.
old. They don't care. And maybe
Yeah.
they're not all too old, but from my perception, it seems like many of the decision makers are like, see ya. I don't really care about the future of the planet because it doesn't impact me.
Well, it doesn't
And
profit
there's
them.
still people who just don't even believe that it's a real thing, which blows my mind. And if you're listening to this and you don't believe that global warming is a real thing, I don't know how to help you. Like
Yeah.
try living. I don't know. Maybe it's like, do they live in a bubble? I don't even understand. And I don't want to go like everyone is entitled to their own opinion. And I respect that. But some things are just science.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, it got politicized, right? And that
Yeah.
forced people to pick a side.
Well, even the term climate change is politicized. They're
Mhm.
trying not to terrify people by the fact that our globe is getting hotter, and that means that life systems will die. They're not able to sustain themselves, even with like tiny temperature variations. And the fact that most people refer to it as climate change, which is so, oh, it's no big deal. The climate's just changing, it's like
Yeah, yeah.
so
We all change. Embrace change.
easy, no big deal. Like, let's all roll with the times, get on board. It's like, that's not what it is, though.
Yeah, climate disaster, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Oh,
think people
it's
don't
just
feel
wild.
connected to the world, I think we've lost that connection. So they don't feel responsible. They can't even conceive of it.
Yeah,
You were lucky to grow up outside. I've been lucky enough to have a job that had me outside. So our connection is already inside. We already have that. Some people just never have that. And maybe
that's a
they
really
don't get
good
it through
point.
like art, and because there's so many ways to plug in
Yeah.
to caring about the earth.
I always forget I had such an unusual childhood where we also traveled so extensively. Uh, and that just has a huge impact on your perspective on this planet and on other cultures and other people. And I truly, like, that's my own ignorance. I forget that there are people who've never left their tiny town. They have never seen anything else. And so how do you put it into perspective? Like, unless you've stood in front of an iceberg and you've seen sheets of ice fall off, or you've stood in a jungle and you've seen parts that are completely decimated, how would you understand? If all you live in is like a suburb and you just see the same track house communities and everything looks fine where you are. Uh, yeah. People
It's
need to
overwhelming.
get out there, see the rest of the world.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
then
I
it
don't
is
blame people
overwhelming.
for
It's an
shutting down.
overwhelming problem.
Yeah. But I feel activated, as do you. You wouldn't have this podcast. You feel activated if you're out there talking about it. You can kind of fight the overwhelm by
Yeah.
even just having these little conversations, listening to a podcast. Understand there's people very much like yourself who care about the planet and want to make a positive impact. And we still have wiggle room. We can still make an impact.
Yeah.
So you can sort of fight the overwhelm by taking some small actions. Like you said, creating a plant-based breakfast. I mean, what a
That's
great,
so easy.
simple idea. Yeah, I mean, I eat yogurt every day. It's vegan yogurt. It's not that hard to find. There's
Yeah.
vegan egg alternatives. Thank God we live in, like, honestly, the golden age of plant-based foods. So
Isn't it wild?
it's
I
amazing.
mean, 20 years ago, maybe,
Mhm.
let's get
Yeah.
even 30 years ago. I would say growing up, I grew up in Southern California, and the main restaurant choices, they were all big chain restaurants. It was like Olive Garden, Red Lobster. These were like your fine dining. It's a special
Mhm.
occasion, so we're hitting up Claim Jumper.
Yeah.
Like, those were our only options. And
Yeah.
grocery stores were not overflowing with organic food options. My mom would drive to there was like a farm right outside of our town, and she would buy just massive quantities of produce. And it's what she would decorate our house with, essentially. There'd be like a huge bowl of pomegranates, like
Yeah.
just
I love
bowls of
that.
like a massive harvest. And we would eat it all. Like, that's what all of our snacks were when we'd come home from school. But now it's like just within 5 minutes of my house, there's probably 200 restaurants and all different cuisines and all different, almost every restaurant has vegan options, gluten-free options. I love the volume of restaurants, especially in Los Angeles, and all over the world now, that are locally sourced, or they work with a local farmer to get their produce. And some places, there was a beautiful restaurant, I wish I could remember the name, in Seattle, but their menu was only prepared from things in their own garden in the back of their property. And I was like, this is so cool. So it changed every day.
Hmm.
It's like, oh, well, we're out of dill. So we're not making that thing now. We're making this other thing.
Yeah. Yeah. You
It's
can't
just
get strawberries in winter
unbelievable.
because,
Yeah.
yeah.
So every time I get kind of bummed out about progress in the world that I don't love, then I remember the beautiful progress like that, where we have access to really wonderful food. And now I feel like prices between organic and non-organic they're equalizing.
Yeah.
It's not, it used to be, 5 times the price or something to get something organic, but I feel like it's pretty on par with everything else that you're buying these days.
Yeah. As long as we'll see if that happens if we get the organics to, you know, clean up their act a little bit,
Yeah. And the
Because
prices will
certainly,
go up again.
yeah, the animal-based inputs are cheap and they have good nutrition. They bring a lot to the table.
Yeah.
Um, I've seen a lot. First of all, I know a lot of vegan gardeners who just have gone chemical, which is unfortunate because they don't have to bother with the organic animals. But
Mm.
we don't want to slide back to using chemicals on produce.
And
So,
chemicals because they're animal free?
mhm,
Okay.
yeah. And I suppose that's, it's just easier. But granted, there aren't alternatives.
Yeah.
So, they don't have that option. But I'd hate to see us slide back to getting away from organics just because organics has this animal problem. Um, but and it's my fertilizer uses, is it cute?
I know. I love
Uh,
your packaging.
I love it too. And we use neem seed, we use there's corn and soy. So those are the main sources of nitrogen. And I want to see us be able to research completely new inputs. I have to use what's on the market right now. But
Hmm.
there's obviously no research into figuring out how to do a plant-based fertilizer when animal-based fertilizers are, again, cheap, so available. They got these things coming out their ears. Of all the byproducts, animal byproduct industry, fertilizer is the smallest chunk. It's leather, obviously,
Yeah.
cosmetics, it's huge for the animal products. Um, and then oil, they're thinking about using it for fuel. And they call it biofuel, but it's really animal waste. I don't mean poop, but animal
Yeah.
carcasses. And they're just like, okay, obviously fuel is a problem, these non-renewable resources, but animals are not a renewable resource either. I know it's a resource we have.
Yeah.
You have a system built to produce these animals easily, but that doesn't make it renewable. So and also it's
It's
the
also
greenwashing,
like it
right?
just
That's
doesn't make it
really,
right.
I know.
I mean, I don't, it's like, how do you, as a human, choose between two horrible choices for fueling an automobile?
Hmm. Yeah. Because, I think people assume I didn't know what biofuel was, but it turned, it's animal based. It just doesn't, I thought it was corn or something. I don't know what I thought it was.
Yeah.
But, to find
I
out
mean,
that
I
it's,
think it can be, right? Like
yeah,
it
well, that's,
doesn't,
yeah, but all
I'm
my
not
research is like,
gonna pretend like I'm super well versed in all the
yeah,
ingredients of biofuel, but I do feel like I read that they can
make it
use
from
things
corn.
like recycled like corn oil, vegetable oil, all those things, and that
And
goes
they
into a
do
part of the
use,
bio waste.
yeah, part of the biofuel is old waste from, and they use it from restaurants. They go pick up the fryer pits
Yeah.
from restaurants. But the move is toward just using animals. They recycle those fry pits, but mostly it's going to be an animal waste. And and like I was gonna say, the greenwashing is
Go
very,
electric.
very big deal. Yeah, go electric. Yeah, but what's interesting too is municipalities like our own, like the government wants us to green things up. So they create tax subsidies for green businesses. And of course, there's already huge tax subsidies, as everyone knows, for agriculture and dairy.
Hmm.
So this is just another way where they're going to provide incentives for companies to make biofuel. And, it's really up to them, however they want to make it. So it's just concerning, one, the greenwashing, and then two, that the government is subsidizing these industries that people really don't even know anything about. My a friend of mine, Maggie Baird, she's a local and she runs a nonprofit called Support and Feed.
Hmm.
And I've had some trouble getting my product licensed. I thought it was going to be fairly straightforward process. But there's been a lot of red tape, much more than you would think. And in fact, I even had my website surveilled by the Department of Agriculture. So, they definitely don't want this to happen. So she's put me in touch with like some nonprofits and law and advocacy groups that offer, legal support.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. And what was interesting when she introduced me to these people, what they did was in the LA school district, they were able to sue LAUSD because you get the subsidies for the milk, right? All the school districts get free milk basically, but it's not
Hmm.
free. But
Yeah.
government subsidies pay for that milk to be delivered because it's good for kids, right? But this company this nonprofit was like, hey, it's good for some kids, but as you probably, I'm sure a lot of people are lactose intolerant, and it happens to be brown and black communities. Asian communities, black communities, they can't drink milk. So why are you subsidizing milk to be given to school children who can't eat it or drink it? And so they said, all we're asking is for a plant-based alternative for kids who want it.
Yeah.
Of course, the ag and dairy industry was like, absolutely not. And so they sued and got the government to go, no, if this is tax dollars subsidizing milk for children, it should be for all children,
Yeah.
children that can't digest it.
Or
And
a
so they were
beverage.
able to
Yeah.
successfully get some plant-based milk options into schools. But it's great when you see the lock hold that these industries have on our governments and our systems, it's concerning.
This is a whole other very long conversation that has
It is,
no
yeah.
end in sight. I geek out so hard on all the like uh Michael Pollan. I read The Omnivore's Dilemma. Maybe Chad and I were like on our first sort of like romantic beach vacation together, and this was my beach read that I brought with me. And I could not, it was like, I basically read the entire book out loud to him. I was like, listen to this fact, listen to this one. Did you know that this is what happens?
Yeah, I started Hope Gardens after reading that book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man. I mean, I just love get it because you know what it does, even if it doesn't change how I behave all the time. Like I'm not vegetarian, and I don't pretend to be, but I try to be conscious about where all of my food comes from, not just animal products, and support local farmers where we can. And I still just like if having a tiny bit more information helps to make that shift, then I'm all about it. Like I have a consciousness now. If I went to a McDonald's drive-through, and I'm only using McDonald's because it's an example from the book, that like how absurd it is, how far your food has traveled, that it's all made out of corn. Like everything you're consuming, your chicken nuggets have corn, your soda has corn, like everything. It's like the car you're driving has corn. It's like, then you learn that corn is subsidized by the government for all the farmers to grow. And it's like on and on and on. And you're like, what is happening in this planet? When farming used to be the most natural and beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Now it truly is just a large corporation. And I don't know, maybe it started with the best of intentions to keep farmers in business and give them
Well, it was
something
a
to grow and guarantee their income and all these things,
yeah.
but it really has
It was the
overtaken.
baby boom when they had the baby boom after World War II. They knew, the amount of people they had to feed was going to be crazy. And so, yeah, their intention was to feed this next generation coming up, but then they just took it too far. There's a beautiful book called The Pastoral Life, and he talks about the change. He's from England, he's a farmer, and he talks about how his family farm changed, and it's
Mm,
very interesting. But like you said, it's all about this consciousness raising,
yeah,
and I hope that there is a mass consciousness, right? And that if you raise your consciousness and I raise my consciousness and someone listening raises their consciousness, that actually can make a measurable impact on our world. Again, even if, like you're saying, it's not that today I went out and recycled, picked dirt out of the beach, but that we could actually raise our consciousness on another level. So it's not just about actions, because honestly, the consciousness comes before the action.
yeah,
So we shouldn't guilt ourselves about not being active when we haven't yet had our consciousness raised. So reading a book, like you said, can be a really great thing. I didn't start off as vegan. This research made me vegan. I just couldn't keep going without kind of being like, okay, so I have no judgment. I always joke I took 2 meat eaters off the table because I ate so much meat. I thought it was a very healthy way to eat. I thought meat and vegetables
yeah,
and fruits was the number one. Like you couldn't do better than that. Fish, all of course, all wholesomely sourced and everything.
yeah. But
Yeah.
now there's a lot of like very famous, very highly ranked, whatever, however you would describe an athlete, who are all plant-based. Tom Brady is vegan. I'm sure there's more. He's the only one that comes to mind because everyone in my family is obsessed with football.
Well, men, especially
Uh,
with heart disease, it's
yeah,
really makes an impact with men and heart disease.
but I love seeing this shift in athletes because they have such a huge following.
Yeah.
And especially for someone like Tom Brady, who is widely regarded as the greatest of all time in his profession, to be able to show that you can achieve that level and maintain it for decades and you're vegan, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of this like mentality of to be an athlete, you have to have like protein powder and supplements and like you got to bro out at the gym, all the things.
Yeah.
Uh, but you really don't, you know?
Yeah.
So
No, it's
that,
really
yeah,
great.
that part makes me really happy. I also love hearing about these sort of like super tough athletes who are taking ballet classes or yoga classes, learning the importance of stretching and the mind body connection. Like it's just, there is that higher consciousness. And I think it is like people are being uplifted by all of those things, everybody's little individual actions, especially when they're on a bigger platform like that. I think it does make a difference around the world, you know?
Yeah. And we shouldn't be shooting ourselves in the foot. I follow a lot of vegan media, of course, now. And, you see a lot of, I'll just say like nastiness, judgment. I don't
Mm-hmm.
think there's anything that even could come close to veganism, that is so all or nothing, unfortunately. Because I think we should obviously be open to everybody making any small, minute amount of change in consciousness raising. Where
Yeah.
vegan is like, are you, I've had some people saying, is your product vegan? Or are you vegan? I'm like, and I understand
Yeah.
that's the
Both.
bar, which is another reason I went vegan, like you don't get to play. And I get that. It's a big sacrifice to be vegan. But we should not be card checking. I don't think that's right. I don't think that's encouraging. I don't think that's sustainable. Saying, because you know how it is too. It's like when you give up chocolate or something, or certainly if you give us something like alcohol, you have one little bit and you're like, well, forget it. Just
Yeah.
all over.
I'm
And I don't
back.
want people to look at that at veganism. I tried to be vegan, gave it up. No, 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 no. Just make a daily choice. Make your own
Yeah.
daily choice. Be comfortable in your
Every
life.
meal.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's with everything you're doing, right? That's your whole thing too. Every little bit of your life you
Yeah.
can examine and make a conscious choice about.
And I try to choose my words very carefully when we talk about sustainability, especially with composed living, because I cannot ever claim to be a fully sustainable company. There is, by nature of what we do, sometimes like just
Mhm.
unnecessary things. I'm also like, I'm not a minimalist. I choose not to consume a lot of new products, but our house is filled with stuff. And it's mostly things that we've been like gifted or we've inherited, or things we've picked up along the way. And I feel comfortable in that phase. Like I can make choices consciously, because I know the impact of my choice. And sometimes, most of the time, I make the right one. And sometimes I don't. And it's the same with my food choices. Most of the time, I make the right choice, but every now and then, I'm so flippin' hungry that I will eat whatever you put in front of my face and in like
Mhm.
massive quantities.
Yeah. People understand
And
this
then,
is all about compromise.
you learn from it and you're like, well, now I feel gross and I don't want to do that again.
Yeah.
But inevitably, it will happen. But I don't want to live my life feeling horrible about the one bad choice that I made instead of celebrating the wonderful choices that we try to make and the fact that you can keep doing that over a lifetime. So, like I know people who there's girls on my team who they're like, I've never ordered anything from Amazon.
Oh, yeah. Right.
This blows my mind.
Yeah.
I'm like, how do you survive?
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Yeah.
uh,
We can't
but
point
I
fingers.
get it,
That's for sure. Yeah. That's a
and
wonderful
like
thing.
that's so awesome for
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
It's not, I can't say that. And
That's
it's
not
not
fun.
because I'm like obsessed with Amazon and I want to give them all of my money, but I'm also a creature of efficiency. And sometimes that's the most efficient thing.
Yeah.
And I understand all of the problems that go into making that choice, and then I just try to offset them by making better choices somewhere else. And I
Right.
think this is truly all everybody can do is be aware of your choices, understand the impact that they have on you, your family, your finances, and the world around you. Because if you don't know what's wrong with ordering from Amazon, everything that you want to buy, you'll never change it, you know? Uh, I would
All
say,
those
just
areas.
one of the things like right now, there's a lot more talk about, I mean, first of all, you've got the amount of energy and resources it takes just to deliver that many packages, let alone the actual packaging, let alone the inks that go onto the cardboard. The fact that most, like, so you don't recycle the cardboard, on and on and on. There's no end to it, let alone the impact on small businesses. I've lost my train of thought because there's so many little things.
There's consequences to all of our actions.
To all of them.
All of them. And, so that's why we just can't point fingers. I'm the same way with Amazon. The convenience, but we're all paying for convenience. I mean, that's the fast food restaurant. It's all convenience. And, and these compromises we make in our life, I was going to say, I much prefer to be blatantly honest about compromise.
Yeah.
Because how else can you move forward? If you're going to be like, I'm zero waste, like zero, my Lord. I mean,
yeah,
like what a bar
I think that's very difficult to do.
Yes. Yeah, we have to work with farmers. We have to work with industries. We have to find a common ground. Our politicians have to find common ground. We don't get everything, even in our day-to-day life or in the larger life.
I want to meet someone who says that they're completely zero waste.
But it's funny,
what
right?
does
That's
that even imply? Do you not own an automobile?
Yeah.
Do you bicycle everywhere that you go? Because where am I going to ride a bike from in my neighborhood? We're not set up that way.
How is that even such a catchphrase? Zero waste.
I remembered my original thought about why, like, the whole problem around online shopping, not just Amazon, is what happens with all of the returns. I think people assume that because they've bought all these things and then they're sending them back, that they're still going to be put up for sale. But now they're finding so much research around the fact that the majority of those items do not go back to the original source and they are not sold again. So they're either shoved off to like a secondary marketplace, or they're discarded, or whatever ends up happening to them. And that's just a whole new cycle of waste that's happening. And to be very honest, like, that's how I don't love running errands. I hate running errands. This is what I mean by efficiency. I think that there's a better use of my time than driving all around town trying to do 20 different things. So if it comes to shopping and I needed to buy something, I might buy 4 different sizes and try them on and then ship them back. Because I didn't know any better. I assumed if I return them to the store, there's nothing wrong with them. They still have the tags. They're brand new. Why wouldn't you just sell that again?
Yeah.
And I had made peace with the delivery of the item to me and the shipping it back.
Yeah.
I was like, I'll find another way to offset that piece of the problem.
Yeah.
So now I'm like, man, I can't do that anymore because I know better now. And so now it would just be, I would feel gross making that decision because I have the information.
Yeah.
But going back to raising the collective consciousness, I don't think you can do that if you're coming from a place of blaming other people or judgment. There's no place for that, even if you don't agree. And I think so many of the problems that we're experiencing in the world right now are stemming from that. It's judgment of other people's decisions and the way they live their lives and their belief systems. And there's very little room for discussion, for learning, for curiosity, and for just supporting each other on, this journey. It's a pretty complicated little life we have.
For sure. Yeah. Just organic fertilizer alone, pretty complicated. I always want to just have the conversation. And I always say it, like you said, thank God at the very beginning, certainly don't blame farmers. This isn't a farmer problem. They have had it hard forever.
Yeah.
Farming was never like an easy industry in the first place. So no wonder they were wanting to integrate things that made it easier, processes easier, streamlined things, made it faster. Sure, that all sounded like a great idea.
Well, it's also a business, and it's
screwed in the end.
Very difficult to run a profitable business where you're trying to support yourself and your family. Have you seen the film The Biggest Little Farm, or Littlest Big
Farm?
Yes. It's so cute.
Yes.
I just loved it. I feel like I recommend it to everyone to watch all the time. But man, does that show you the idea we have of what it takes to run a farm versus the extremely difficult and unpredictable reality of making that happen. And I think that they did it really, really well.
Yeah.
Beautiful movie.
Yeah. And those, the subsidies don't go to those small farms. The
No.
subsidies only go, okay, if you buy these chemical fertilizers, okay, if you buy these chemical pesticides, then we'll subsidize your farm.
But you know what was really promising about that film, I thought, was how many people came out of the woodwork to join them in their mission. People came to live on the property or work for free or just volunteer their information. This is the beauty of humanity, and we don't focus enough on those people. It's like all it took was 10 people coming to support them in their dream, and they were able to create something so awesome. And people will do that. If you're passionate about something and you're doing something that's really cool for community or our planet, anything, you'll find your supporters and they'll be just as excited as you are and they'll go out of their way to help you, which I think is really awesome.
Yeah. And that's, staying on that optimism tip, that's what you got to do. Because,
Yeah.
the media and everything, we really only get, because that's what sells papers and stuff, right? And clicks is kind of hatred and discord, unfortunately. We don't
Yeah.
click through as
I
often on
can't.
positivity and
I'm like
elsewhere.
an
So
ostrich with the news. I'm like, no, thanks. It doesn't exist in my world.
I am the same. I have just forget it. I used to
I
open
can
it up every time.
scan
And wasn't our,
headlines only. And then I'm like, oh, it's all
yes,
bad again. Great.
yes.
On to the
Do you
next.
remember our parents' newspapers? There'd be like the Cub Scouts build a bridge over a rabbit.
Yeah.
It's like it was other news. It was other cute stuff. There'd be wedding announcements. It was other stuff. You just read a newspaper. There's Dear Abby, even the comics. Now, like you said, it's just this clickbait, negative, negative. Sometimes I would even get notifications of like horrible local news. I'd be like, I don't want to know that.
Oh, yeah. And
Listen
it's not
to
just
me.
from news sources anymore, which I find to be increasingly alarming. Like
Oh,
almost every app on my phone gives me bad news in real time. Our Ring doorbell, bad news in the
oh, you're right.
community. Next door, bad news in the community. Like
Yes,
Facebook
citizen.
groups, bad
Mhm.
news in the community. It's like, oh my gosh, like it
Yeah.
wasn't enough. The huge scale problems that we hear about and learn about. But now, like, my doorbell is telling me.
Dude, you're so right. You are so right. Yes, because I have a Ring and I get those notifications too. Yeah.
I just learned how to turn them all off because I was like, this is too much. How many lost animals and burglaries are happening on a daily
I
basis?
know. Amazon delivery packages stolen.
I'm like, holy moly. Yeah, it's just that's overwhelming to me.
You're right. I
And
forgot
then
about
just,
that
yeah,
Ring of notifications. Yeah. Yeah.
no
There's no
more.
positive
Not on
notification.
my watch.
Yeah. So and so ate vegan today. Oh my God. She was gonna
Yeah,
pull up
what?
McDonald's, she backed out and went into Whole Foods.
That's what I should do. Is just like combat it all with like, well, that's interesting. Did you know that I just made a plant-based breakfast? Here's my recipe.
Yeah, exactly. Those should be the notifications we're getting.
Oh, hilarious.
Yes.
People would be like, what's wrong with you? What? Why are you sharing this? Be like, I don't know. Why are you sharing that someone stole your Amazon package? Why are you
Yeah.
ordering from Amazon?
Totally.
Oh,
Yeah.
hilarious.
No, there's room for all that for sure. Yeah.
One of the questions that I always forget to ask everyone is if there's one thing that you're very focused on right now in your life, like if there was a word or a feeling or a value that describes sort of your overall purpose at this moment in your journey.
Wow, that's really good. The very first word that came to mind was passion.
Mm,
And I think that's because it does get you up in the morning when it is. I've never struggled with depression until COVID, which I'm sure is very common experience to
mhm.
have had. And I was even as a landscaper, not even in the lockdown. I was able to move freely and continue working. Um, but the collective, feeling of depression, and it came sort of after
Yeah.
we all got back out. The way things have not gone back to normal depresses me. I'm a very social person, and it's just forever changed how we interact. My son, sports events, it just everything sort of changed for us. And so being able to find something I'm passionate about to re-engage with the world
Mm.
is just something that keeps me going right now. So I feel very blessed to have something, have found this strange little issue that I can kind of ride every day.
I think it's amazing.
Yeah.
And everything you just said really, I connect with that a lot. had a wonderful time. And Chad and I are both so grateful. And we know how blessed we are to have gone through the entire lockdown with no real negative side effects. There was nobody sick. We didn't lose anybody close to us. Our family enjoyed spending so much time together. There was a lot of wonderful things that came out of it. I love that Chad works from home now. Uh, we got to spend more. I mean, we saved so much money. He used to spend 2 hours a day or more driving in his car 5 days a week. So imagine the impact on the planet when that
Yeah.
stopped happening. Like there was so much good that came out of it. And I think we were very positive. And then after, that's when it hit me. And I was like, what is life even? Like, what I think it's because it changed me in like a fundamental way. Like it shook me to my core that I want, well, first, that we have a finite amount of time on this planet. I think I understood that before, but like it sank in. And that I've reached probably the halfway point of my life. Um, Obviously, nobody knows when their time is. Maybe today is my day. Or maybe I live to be 120. Who knows? But I just started thinking about things differently, and then it became this like fear that I'm not going to do the things that I'm on this planet to do. And then also, like, how do I know what those things are? I just got so stuck in my own head of like, I have to figure out why I'm supposed to be here and what I'm supposed to do. And then every day I have to be fulfilling that purpose. It was like this crazy pressure that I put on myself. But it lasted for like a year and a half. Like I was like, I don't want to go to work anymore. And Chad's like, what do you mean? I was like, I don't know. I'm just not, it's like, what am I going to do? The same thing every day? Just organize somebody else's house? Like, what's that doing? Like,
Yeah.
is this really my purpose? Uh, and I only share that because it's like, of course I love what I do and I love the brand that we have. And I'm so honored every time somebody welcomes us into their home. But it really stuck with me that like, is there something more I could be doing? And if so, how do I even find it?
Yeah. And I think before COVID, there was a real hustle culture.
Yeah.
And I worked so hard during the pandemic. And when it was all over, one, I thought the world would change for the better somehow, and it didn't. And then, there's like, again, the social thing, it just changed forever. And like you, I questioned everything. Like, what am I doing here? And I wanted to find my purpose, but I also wanted to find ease
Mm-hmm.
because I was
Yeah.
really sick of the hustle. Not that I have tons of energy. It's not the physical work or anything. It's almost a madness, a productivity problem, right? You see that a lot on social media. People are now
Yeah.
fighting this idea of constant productivity. And as a mom, you could fill your day cleaning out especially as an organization, you
Yeah.
could fill your day with minutia all day
I
long if
mean,
you want to.
honestly, I don't need to have a job in order to get a massive amount of shit done on a daily basis. And I think a part of that too was like there was a little bit of like, well, that's a bummer that like all I'm doing is working in chores. But like, where's the ceramics class? Where's the like, I don't know, maybe I want to be a hip hop dancer. I don't know, because I've never tried it.
Yeah.
But it's like I could truly fill an entire day of like gardening, pulling weeds, like planting new vegetables, cleaning the house, maybe making a painting, pickling something.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I think I like super overcorrected. And that's
Mm,
where a lot of that feeling was coming from, where I was like, maybe my purpose is to like move to upstate New York and live on a farm and I'll pickle everything that I grow.
yeah. There's an authenticity that we need to draw from. Um, and it's not easy work in any way because I think the world kind of fights against authenticity. That's why Amazon, the monoculture, that's a very attractive thing. I mean, again, that's why we've all ended up ordering from Amazon. It's just we're kind of attracted to a monoculture, but it hurts us because then we lose all of the differences between us. And again, we're so intolerant of differences between each other. I mean, you could
Yeah.
find a million reasons to hate somebody. So that doesn't encourage authenticity because that authenticity, that integrity is at odds with community sometimes. And we also want to belong to something. But when the cost of belonging is at our own authenticity, it's just that push pull. And I really think we need to push the authenticity, because then we end up finding realer communities. When we sacrifice ourselves for our community, then, we're sacrificing ourselves. But if you're your most authentic self, which changes minute to minute,
Mm,
and you find community through that authenticity, then those are much happier connections. But I know, as a people
yeah.
pleaser and someone who always wanted to belong, that's been a challenge for me. I sacrificed who I was because I wanted that belonging so much, that community. And so to have to push back again, I'm sort of pushing back against my organic gardening community to say, hey, we're not doing things right. But I would rather have that authentic journey and find a new community of like-minded people, which I know are out there,
Yeah.
because everyone takes this information about this stuff and goes, what? What? So I had to risk, you know being rejected by my organic gardening community to say something different, to live with some more integrity, which is really what gets us up in the morning.
Yeah. And honestly, like when I have a conversation with you, I think here's a woman who's extremely competent, extremely confident, very comfortable in your own skin. And that's attractive to me. Like I want to be in conversation with people where I'm like, yeah, they own it. They own who they are, they own their passions. I get uncomfortable around people where you get the sense that like they're not who they're presenting themselves to be.
Yeah.
And it makes it like instantly repels me. And sometimes I can't even put my finger on it, but I'm like, something is just off with your energy. But I'm always drawn to people where I'm like, yeah, they seem very just comfortable with who they are. And even if it's not something that I'm hugely passionate about, I just love seeing other people embracing their own journey and who they are and having an opinion about things and sharing it with other people. I love all of that.
Yeah. I love listening to Malcolm Gladwell, and I don't always agree with everything he says, but he always just has an interesting take on things.
Yeah.
A curiosity too, right? Like if you're curious about other people and their experiences, you're just going to learn so much instead of coming forward with judgments and assumptions about people's experiences,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of what we have a lot of right now.
Does he have a podcast? I don't even know.
He does, yeah.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of what his podcast is right now, but I can't think of it. But
Adriana will find it and she'll put it in the show notes.
yeah, yeah, very, very interesting stuff.
Cool. I'll have to add it to my list of things to listen to.
Yeah.
Tell us how we can support you on your journey, how people can find you, where they can track your progress of Cabbage Hill Fertilizer, all the things.
Yeah, so it's cabbagehillfertilizer.com, and all of my handles on social media are Cabbage Hill Fertilizer.
Cool.
We are crowdfunding right now. Getting organically certified as an animal-free fertilizer has been shockingly challenging. So we just got this nonprofit that's a legal group, and they're going to help us go through it with the CDFA, which is the California Department of Food and Ag. All fertilizer is licensed state to state. So it's a fairly expensive little journey because you have to do it with every single state. Now,
Yeah.
California is the strictest state, as we might, which is one of the reasons we like to live in California,
Mm.
allegedly high standards. And so they have high standards in terms of the hoops I have to jump through. So we're raising money for that organic certification, which is the only thing that stands between us and selling right now.
Awesome.
So yeah, so we have a donor box, and there's a link on my Instagram, which is at Cabbage Hill Fertilizer, and then there's a link on the homepage of cabbagehillfertilizer.com. So pretty easy to find them both. So we're doing that crowdfunding, and then we're having investors right now, passion investors. I've been very, very fortunate to have some really great people, clients, and colleagues donate. So if people are interested in investing in new green companies, we got that too. And that information is also on the website. So all pretty easy to find.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being my guest today. I feel like this is a very enlightening conversation. And I wish you so much luck on your journey. I love
Yeah, I
that
always
you're
love
doing this.
talking to you. Absolutely. Yeah, you're a real pleasure to talk to. I really admire you.
Oh, thank you. That's very sweet.
Of course.